Viva las Backmarkers! We're back, baby! This is the Backmarkers, the F1 podcast for new fans, by new fans, and really it's just me and my buddy Austin hanging out and talking about F1 a few times a year. How you doing, Austin?
Dude, I am doing great. I am so happy to have a chat about
Yep.
what was a very fun weekend.
The thing was for me, right? So when we were planning out all the episodes we wanted to do this year, I was like, we've got to do one about Vegas. And like at the time, I was like, it's probably going to be a bit of a disaster. But I would say, now we'll get to the disaster of FP1, but I think that this is a great addition to the calendar as a fan. Like, it was a great race. It was one of my favorite races of the year.
Yes, yeah. So my experience was a little bit warped because I was actually there, and being at a race versus watching it live is a
Yep.
very different experience. We'll talk
Yes.
about it, but I completely agree. It was a sight to behold, not only just sort of just looking around Las Vegas and seeing how transformed it was. Obviously, less than perfect as all these things are, and actually there were a few things that I was a little bit surprised about that was
Okay.
set up not only positively, but also some things that I think a lot of people were very upset about. But it was definitely a very unique experience, and I will
Yep.
tell you, I'm definitely going back next year. Like I'm sold. It was totally worth
I
it.
want to do it. I really want to do it. Like, I would expect sometime in the next couple of years I would go to this race. Because, like, I haven't been to one yet, right? And I still want to, but I feel like I want there to be a reason that I would want to go
Yeah.
to the race other than watching it on television. Like, I look at Silverstone and it's kind of like, I know for how hard it is to get in and out of Silverstone.
Yes.
And it's like, is it worth it? But I feel like something like, I think of Vegas, obviously Monaco, right? Like there's like there are reasons to go to these races that a little bit, and I know it's the same for Kota, right? Like apparently Kota is just like impossible to get in and out of.
Oh my God. I will tell you all about that. Yes, because that is it's very different. It's a very different vibe. But yeah, it's. I would love to tell you all about it once we talk a little bit more
All
about
right.
the race itself, because I have a lot of thoughts I would love to share with you on your future Vegas excursions.
All right, we should start from the start though, and so
Yes,
we should talk
yes.
about FP1. So this is just so unfortunate. This is just so bad. So obviously we had manhole issues, right? And we had Sainz and Ocon, but really everybody's focusing on Sainz, right? Because he had the
Yeah.
majority of the damage. And
Yeah.
what I understand is that basically the suction that the cars create when
Yep.
going down the streets was pulling these like manhole access covers out of the
Yeah.
ground. And
Yes.
is kind of, when you think about it, probably something you can't test for unless
Yeah.
you're actually sending a car. Like, I guess the only way to test it is to get a car, right, and drive it. But like even then, like you can't cover the whole road,
Yeah.
right? So like this
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
just feels like the way I see it is just like a very unfortunate mistake
Yeah,
or
of course.
accident, I guess.
And it's not a unique thing that has happened. I think wasn't it George Russell in like Azerbaijan a couple years ago when he's still at Williams? I feel like he did the exact same thing. He
Yep.
pulled a manhole cover up. Yeah, I feel like every few years ago or every few years it happens at a street track.
This is a street
And it's
track problem for sure.
yeah, yeah. And it's also like I do believe that they preemptively weld some of these things down, but I don't know if maybe they didn't weld it enough or they didn't check. I mean, look, these things happen. Obviously, it's really unfortunate, and it's probably a little bit more unfortunate the way they handled the situation. But as far as like the actual incident happening, these things happen. Is the very first
Yep.
few minutes of the very first laps that anyone had put on the track. They're going to do as much as they can to prepare and organize and whatnot. But ultimately, I mean, these things can happen even on street tracks that have existed for years.
Like, and then it ended up that, Science's car was destroyed. FP1 was effectively cancelled, right? And then,
They ran 8 minutes, I think.
yeah. And then FP2 was then just like delayed for hours and hours and hours. So they got started at like 2:30 in the morning, I think, running until 4, which is just like, I genuinely like can't believe that these guys made it work safely, like the drivers.
Yeah.
Like the fact that they were able to pull that off. And I was watching some of the, because it was kind of funny because for me, it was then on in my morning because it had run so late So I had it on the next day, so I was actually watching it because I woke up, checked the news, and I was like, oh, that sounds like it was rough because like all the science stuff was happening while I was in bed,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then I was like, oh, FP2's on, and they're gonna run at some point. I want to put this on and see if they if they get destroyed
yeah.
or something, right? And they were talking to the drivers, and like Jensen Button and Karun Chandok were saying that like they were asking the two of them like, oh, is this terrible? It's like, look, once these guys get in these cars, you are full of adrenaline. It's like
Yeah.
they're awake. It doesn't matter if they've
Yeah.
slept. They're awake. And like they were saying, if anything, the problem is they won't go to sleep for hours after because you're so full of adrenaline. It says also they got
Yeah.
the debriefs. It's like
Yeah, yeah.
this was tough. Like I hope that maybe they can try and tweak the practice sessions. I think the issue is, I don't know what it's like at other street circuits, but it seemed like the issue was Vegas is just using these roads in the daytime.
Yes. Yeah, so that's exactly it. So on the ground, the roads close at 5 p.m. local. Now, from my understanding, when they agreed to do the Grand Prix and everything, they obviously had to negotiate with the Las Vegas city council or whatever, and decide kind of what the times are and everything. Because before the race, there was an enormous amount of infrastructure work that had to happen in Las Vegas. So they resurfaced most of the main sort of area of Las Vegas Strip. Obviously, they had to do a bunch of stuff on sort of the backside, which it's funny. So the where a lot of the actual stuff is where like the paddock building and everything it is sort of it's on the backside. You kind of go around Planet Hollywood and over there. So I know F1's purchased like a plot of land
Yep.
and all of that sort of paddock area is permanent. That actually used to be like a super seedy, crappy sort of place. Like it was like no, you didn't want to walk down there. Like and it was funny walking on there now. It's like how much money they poured into it and like the streets and it just so much of it has been sort of I don't want to say revitalized, but they definitely have like sort of
I think it's so
improved that
smart
area.
from F1
Yeah.
to like buy that land and build something
Yeah.
there that's theirs. And like this is an
Mhm.
important piece of context in case people listening to this don't know. The F1 race is being promoted and put on by F1, where every other
Yes.
race on the calendar, there is a promoter in the middle or an organization in the middle that is bidding and paying F1 for the rights to put on the race, and then they are responsible for the race and everything that goes on within it, working in partnership with F1. But if something goes wrong, that's on the promoter. That's on the promoter to issue refunds, etc., etc. This race is owned and operated by Formula One, the organization. So if you were wondering, why is there so much promotion for Las Vegas throughout the entire calendar year? Because like Adina kept saying to me, she was like, why are there always banners at the races? And I didn't know at the time. I was like, I don't know, they must be really excited. But no, because F1 own this one. And so it was important to them that it went well. And I think it is a very smart move if you've got a 10-year contract, and it will probably go longer, to own a building, which I'm sure they can use as offices or whatever, right? That they might want to do. But they now own the building and the first and last corners. It's all built into the land that they own.
Yeah, and I'm super curious. So I was actually in Vegas. Actually, I think I was texting you a month or two ago. As I just happened to be driving by because I was staying at a hotel that's like right down the street from there, and I drove by the paddock building. I was like, "Whoa!" I couldn't believe it how like huge it was. And I understand that most of that is permanent. I actually think even like the grandstands on the
Yeah,
other side, I
they are.
believe are permanent. But certainly the actual paddock building and everything. I'm very curious if you show up there in like a month. Can you go over there? Is that like is it gonna be like a museum? Like I don't know if they've actually got this stuff sort of sorted
It'll
out.
be
But
fenced
it's
up for
really
now.
interesting. Yeah, probably. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because like I was when I was leaving on Sunday, I drove right by it on the way to the airport, and they had everything was still kind of open, but they just had like cops just kind of standing there to make sure you didn't go in. But all those big loading pallets with all the Ferrari logos and everything of all the gear that was getting loaded up to go to Abu Dhabi. It was cool to see, but I'm very curious to see what they do with this thing in the long run. But yeah, look, FP1, it was a mistake. It happens. I think the fact that people sat around because this was so the way that the event works. So the streets close at 5, then 6 o'clock is when the gates open, and then I believe FP1 was at 10. So you can imagine people have been there for 4 hours and they see 8 minutes of action, and then originally FP2 I believe was supposed to be like midnight or something, but instead it was 2 a.m. and they kicked everyone out. So there's people who were there from 6
Yeah.
p.m. to 2 a.m. who got 8 minutes of action on the track, were told to leave, and instead of getting a refund, got a $200 store voucher to buy more merch, which
That's
would buy you
incredible.
about
I
two
didn't
t-shirts.
know that part. That is hilarious. And that is
Yeah.
because, right? And like again, F1 don't want to give you the ticket money back because it's their money this time. Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah.
I hope that they will learn from this to have better contingency plans because I think it is an issue when they are time limited on when the practice sessions can happen.
Yes.
Because if
Yes.
realistically they should have moved FP1 and FP2 to the morning of the next day. That's what should have happened, right?
Yeah.
Realistically, but they can't do that, and so there needs to be some kind of plan because it was bad for the fans, it was bad for the teams, it was bad for the drivers. It didn't help anyone, and realistically, they were lucky there were no accidents. I think as course of
absolutely.
this. So
And they've got very limited room to maneuver because so the way it works is that because the track not only shuts down part of the Vegas Strip and the whole strip is shut down, but they only drive on one side. The other side is just for like police vehicles and just parking and whatnot for all the people who are actually there to gate or whatever. But the thing is, there's a lot of like hotels and stuff which are ring fenced in. And the only way in or out, because obviously normally there's regular roads, so the only way in or out if you're on the inside of the track while the actual track is live is they've built these like sort of big temporary bridges that go over the track, which they only, I guess they're only going to be up for, a few days or whatever, and they're already tearing them down. But the problem is that they're like 2-lane little bridges. So the problem is that they can't really leave the track live and open for any longer than they have to because, like, imagine they've got to come across a little 2-lane bridge over the actual racetrack, and like I think there's like 2 or 3 of them. It's very, very limited. So that was one of the things. So we actually flew in on Saturday. So we came in quite late. So we arrived like an hour or two before they closed the actual track. And looking at sort of the infrastructure and how you get in and out, I understand why there's like no support races or anything else. Like literally, they shut the track down, they clear everyone out who doesn't have a ticket, they build the walls back and put the fences up, make sure everything is good, and then they're ready to go. Like there's not a lot of extra time. Like the whole process takes a couple hours for them to get everything ready and prepped and whatnot. So it is one of the sort of the realities of racing on a street track where you have to respect the city that you are sort of racing in. But seeing it sort of from the ground, it was very eye-opening to like, oh, I understand why this thing is so tight because I've got a lot of work to do in that 3 or 4 hours between get all the actual cars off the road, get the F1 cars running on the actual track.
It sucked that Carlos got a penalty.
They're going to change that. It absolutely did. They're going to change that. Like, not only is I'm sure, I think that Ferrari are already in sort of machinations to try to actually get some kind of compensation for the extensive damage that happened, but also there's no way, like even the stewards were saying like, oh, if we didn't have to give this penalty, we wouldn't, but we literally see no way around it. Like, they're gonna have to change. They absolutely have to change the rule because it makes 0 sense for a team or a driver to be penalized.
I think the problem, like as I was hearing it, the issue is it could open so many loopholes.
Yeah.
This is like how do you judge it, right? Like in the rules, how do you judge it? Of like what would be the way around it?
You give the stewards, what is it? Like what most contracts have this. It's like
it's like a dispensation
God or whatever.
Yeah, but
like something.
The issue is rain.
No.
Rain is actually an act of God, right?
Okay, that's fair. Okay. I say that out loud. You're right. There are a lot of loopholes.
I think this is the reason that they didn't do it, and like the reason that they were saying they couldn't do it is the loopholes. But I still think that something should have been done so Sainz didn't take that penalty because it was not his fault at all. It was pure luck. He was just the first driver to drive over it. It could have been anybody. And he got horrifically penalized and ruined his race. He could have been on the podium.
I mean, he could have won that thing.
He could have won it.
Like, who knows? Yeah.
And it sucks. I feel like it sucks. And, it was like, they were talking about how the teams should come together, but there was one team that wouldn't do it, which is obviously Mercedes, right? Because they're fighting. And it's like, so like, while that sucks, you understand from Mercedes, they could be any team. Whichever team would have been in Mercedes' shoes, they all would be like, and even if it's like switched, Ferrari wouldn't want to do it because this is the sport at times, right? It's just like, how can you find the points? But I wish that this wouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have happened. to Carlos. He did
Yeah,
not deserve it, and there was nothing he could have done about it. He was driving in the middle of the track. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't
agreed.
like he got messed up from going over a chicane or something.
I mean, maybe they just write something very specific into the rules. So it's like if all of the stewards agree that a car took serious damage from a fault of the track and nothing else, then they are allowed to be excused from the penalty. Like maybe if it's something that's just very, very specific for like if a barrier collapses or a manhole cover comes up or something that's not like something left in the track, that's obviously not a problem. But like, so like literally a piece of asphalt gets sucked up and gets thrown through someone's tire. I don't know, whatever. I think maybe that's the way they
Yeah.
should handle it. They should handle it though. Like it is ridiculous that obviously the thing that happened that delayed things that happens, right? And that could happen at any street track. That could happen at any track for any reason, right? Like what happens if someone like obliterates a barrier and it takes them 3 hours to fix it? And obviously they gotta wait the 3 hours, right? Like delays happen. People, when you show up to a live sporting event, you do accept that there's some element of, oh, things may not go according to plan, right? But
Hmm.
penalizing someone for driving on a track when it completely blows their car into smithereens
Yep.
basically feels a little bit unfair. But yeah, it was a quite spicy way to start the
Yep.
Las Vegas Grand Prix,
I
and
mean, and
all the
also
people who
like
were
when this time came around, people were already mad about this. Like
yeah.
I feel like there was like an overall sentiment online of just people
Mm-hmm.
being generally mad about the fact that the Vegas Grand Prix was happening. This was just like powder keg time, like people were just
Mm-hmm.
flipping out. I would
Absolutely.
say there were a lot of cool car liveries. I think there were a lot of people went all out.
Hold on, hold on, wait. A lot of cool liveries.
Yeah.
How many of these liveries do you think were actually cool? Because I would say that there was one and a half that looked cool.
No, at
What did you
least
think looked cool?
two.
Okay,
Ferrari
what
looked
did you think?
excellent.
Easy, absolutely no brainer, phenomenal.
Alpha
Yes,
Tauri
yes. AlphaTauri looked
with
pretty
like they
good. I
looked
liked
like the lights
AlphaTauri.
going over it. I
Yeah,
liked
yeah,
the Red Bull because they actually finally did something that wasn't just here's the Red Bull with a slightly different
yeah.
tweak. Like they always do this thing. Hey, look at this fan livery contest. It's like it's just the same one. Like at least it had something going on. They had like the poker chips on the wheels, right? Like I appreciated that. It was something different.
Yeah, yeah,
It was
yeah.
also funny to me that like so many teams did stuff and Mercedes were just like, nah, man. Like it's kind of like there was just something about it. They didn't do a thing. They did
Yeah,
nothing. They didn't have any
yeah.
special suits or like any change to the car. It's like no, we're not gonna bother. I didn't like the
I mean,
Williams one. It felt too try hard.
awful, 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 awful. I cannot overstate how much I hate that Williams. It was
But the
just so
biggest
ugly.
crime, the biggest
Hit
crime.
me,
Which,
hit
by
me,
the way,
hit me.
before I say that, I will just say the Ferrari race suits. Carlos Sainz was mesmerizing in that suit. There was like a moment he got out of the car at one point and started running. I mean, you know, like, what happened to this man? He just like, it was stunning with his bouncy hair and like, he just looked incredible. Carlos should wear that suit every week. But anyway, the crime of
Yeah.
was the Red Bull race suit. What the hell were these two dressed as? They looked
Especially the
like
podium.
idiots. They looked so stupid in those
They were
suits.
supposed to be Elvis
Elvis,
suits or
yeah.
something, but like
But
okay.
Carlos looked like he was a Ferrari driver.
You
Why
mean
were they red
yeah,
and
yeah,
white? Why were they red and white? Like why?
yeah. I just that podium and them in the back of that limo. I was just like, wait, what happened? Oh no, that's Checo. Okay, I
They
got
had
it.
little
Okay.
stars down the side and the fake
Yikes.
like opening. Yeah,
No, not good.
those suits they were criminal, man.
Not good. I just look. I'm happy that everyone was excited for the race. I'm
Yep.
excited that everyone was amped about it. And you know what?
Yep.
Do some custom liveries. I don't care. The only slight thing I have about it is just that like are special liveries really that special when you have them for half the races of the year? Like to be fair, I don't want to like say that's a bad thing. I mean, most other sports you run whatever livery anytime. Like who cares, right? I think Formula One's typically been very restrictive on like, hey, the car has to look like this. All your minor tweaks, change the sponsor logo, but that's pretty much it. But like, it does kind of feel like everyone tries to make a big deal about these special liveries as if they're really all that big of a deal and special. When in reality, it's like, oh, a third of the races of the year, you've got some different livery. Congratulations, we don't need a whole song and dance. Or in Red Bull's case, you don't need to drop an RB19 from the roof of the club to show off that you've got some purple paint on it. Like, congratulations. To me, I do feel like it's a little bit calm down a little bit, guys. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's not that exciting. Just fine.
I still like some of these liveries though.
I think honestly, the Ferrari one was great. The
Ferrari's
AlphaTauri
so
I actually got
sick.
to see. I got to see the AlphaTauri right up close. I actually got to touch the car. Don't tell Red Bull.
I saw on
But
Instagram.
yeah. I looked around and went, boop.
Was it the actual car?
So it was an
Like a third model?
No, it was last year's car. So I'll tell the story of like where I was.
Okay.
But yeah, it was last year's model they had, but with this year's livery on
That's
it.
clever. That's
So
clever.
yeah, so no
I have
FAA penalties.
I
for
have
me,
one
thankfully.
complaint about the Ferrari livery.
Okay.
So I love the Ferrari livery. I think it's fantastic. I'm currently playing F1 23, which by the way is fantastic.
Yeah.
F1 if you played F1 21 and played the breaking point thing, it was like they had like a
I did. Yeah.
they brought it back for this year. Oh my god, it's so good. This is such a
I
great
need to play
story.
it.
But I did that and I'm playing through a season now. Hurley Motorsport, we're going great. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's going great this year. We're having a good time.
Nice.
I was halfway through a race a few days ago, put my PlayStation into rest mode, and I turned my PlayStation on yesterday, and it's like the game updated. So
Okay.
it started me from the beginning again. And now the
Wait,
Ferrari has the Vegas livery on it. Like it does.
Wait. You lost your save file?
No, I was
Or-
like halfway through a race and just like put my PlayStation to rest
Oh.
mode. But then the
Right,
game
right.
updated like
So you had to
on
restart
its
that
own.
race.
So I had to restart the race. And from what
Okay.
I can see, the major change is that they put the Vegas Ferrari livery in. So like I'm racing around Spa and the Ferrari looks like it's from Vegas. And I'm like, I love it, but was it worth it for this? Like, you know what I mean? Like you just
imagining
crushed
you
my
drive-
my progress.
I just imagine you're driving by a Ferrari, you hear "Viva Las Vegas" as you drive by.
I mean, it was like, hang on a minute. Come on, you know, this is like it's the show's passing me. I'm like, really? I mean, it looks good, but really for this, you know?
Honestly, I like that livery enough, man. They can just leave it. It's fine.
It is very funny to me of like, why have they done this? Like, why have they updated it and now like made it the permanent Ferrari livery in the game, I guess? Which
you know
that
what?
should
It's
be the
festive.
permanent Ferrari livery. That was just a good looking car. They looked great.
Yes, and I think the problem with look, we talked about this earlier in the season. Like I'm a big fan of the Ferrari livery. The problem is that while I understand that red and yellow is Ferrari colors, red and yellow is also McDonald's colors,
Yep.
and I think that people think about McDonald's a little bit more often than they think about Ferrari. So I
Mm-hmm.
think when you see the red and yellow race suits and stuff, I think people think McDonald's. So red and white feels
Red,
a little
white,
bit
and
more
black.
distinct.
Sick.
Yes, that feels a little more not distinct, but like it doesn't immediately make me think about Burger King or something. It's like, oh, this is a cool modern livery for a modern time.
All right, we're gonna take a pit. You got the
Do it.
timer ready?
I am ready to go.
See if I can break a world record.
All right, you 1.9 seconds. Let's go. 3, 2, 1, and begin.
This. That's it. We got to start again now. We
gotta start.
I was
We gotta
breaking
start.
the record, but it's not very good. I don't think we've fulfilled our contractual obligation.
All right, for real now. 3, 2, 1, begin.
This episode of the Backmarkers is brought to you by Bitdefender, a global leader in cybersecurity. In the world of Formula One, every millisecond counts, and cybersecurity is no different when it comes to stopping attacks. Just like a driver needs a helmet for their protection, using a device without proper protection can lead to serious consequences. When it comes to protecting your digital life, you want the best security possible, and that's exactly what Bitdefender provides. Bitdefender is a company that's driven by a mission for top performance in technology and innovation, and they put their customer needs first and foremost. As a global leader in cybersecurity, Bitdefender has been recognized time and time again for its commitment to excellence. They've won numerous awards for their innovative solutions and dedication to customer satisfaction. Plus, they're trusted by millions of people around the world to keep their digital lives safe and secure, all while constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible in the world of cybersecurity. What sets Bitdefender apart is their focus on innovation and technology. They're always at the forefront of new developments in cybersecurity, working tirelessly to stay ahead of the latest threats. They use advanced machine learning algorithms to detect and block all kinds of threats in real time, and they provide multi-layer protection that keeps you safe from all kinds of threats, including zero-day attacks. If you want to protect your digital life with the best security possible, trust Bitdefender. Their leadership in cybersecurity is underpinned by a desire to serve their customers' needs first and foremost. Head to bit.ly/discover Bitdefender to learn more about Bitdefender and find out the best cybersecurity solution for you. That is bit.ly/discover Bitdefender. Go there now. Our thanks to Bitdefender for their support of this show and all of Relay FM.
Time 1:45:25.
Okay,
So
that wasn't great.
second fastest of our Bitdefender spots though. It was faster than the last couple. It was solid. It was a solid
I
run.
lost like 1.5 seconds.
You know what? You sound like a. Never mind. I'm not gonna make the joke. I was gonna make the Ferrari joke. I'm not gonna make the easy Ferrari joke. Totally fine. Well done, my friend. Well done.
Thank
We're
you.
back on the track. We got pitted. We got mediums on now. We're ready to make the sprint to the finish line over the next 45 minutes.
So
Tell me
what it was like. Tell me all about your experience. How did you get to
Okay.
go? Why did you go? Where did you go? I want to know it all.
Yes. Okay. So, slight conflict of interest here. It was actually Red Bull who invited me out to the race. So, thank you to Red
I'm
Bull.
drinking
Not
a
that I
Red
am
Bull right
partisan.
now, you know?
There you go. Not that we're partisan in any way or whatever or biased, but they were very kind to offer me a
They
ticket
didn't
to
offer
their
me.
energy station.
So they probably have heard some things that I've said
You know what?
about their world
No
champion,
comment.
you know?
Here's the thing. I may have also said some things, but they're cool. It's all good. It's all good. It's all good. It's all good. Maybe they don't
Thanks,
listen
Red
to
Bull.
the podcast. Yeah, so they offered tickets to the energy station, which is very cool. It was on turn 3, I think. Basically right past the finish line when they kind of hang the left and they start swinging around, sort of like that Red Bull station where where they had all the Red Bull banners with all the stands and stuff. It was kind of like right there. Honestly, probably the slowest part of the track, I think. It's quite slow and it was difficult. It was we only saw a handful of times where people were like trying to pass there. It was narrow, but yeah, so they were very kind in inviting us, and they gave a ticket for the energy station. So my wife and I went. Um, okay, so let me give you a little bit of backstory here. We've talked about this, I think, a lot off camera. I don't think so much on camera. I was very much against going to this race because having gone to Coda, in Austin, and on not only I've gone on a non F1 weekend just to go to the track, and then I've also gone to see a race, and the difference in that race is similar to a lot of other purpose-built racetracks around the world, but it's quite awful when there are 300,000 people who show up and there are 2 little farm roads that get you in and out, right? It's even though Coda is not far from Austin. In fact, from the top of turn 1 at Coda, you can turn around, you can see the Austin city skyline. It is not super far away. But the hours you have to wait to get on a bus, to wait an hour in traffic, to make it a mile to get into your car, to sit in traffic, to drive 3 miles back to your hotel is gnarly, right? And obviously, if you go into that with that mindset, you know that you're going to be there for, watch an hour and a half race. You're going to have 3 hours of commute on either side or whatever. It's a little bit more reasonable, but not a great experience from a fan point of view. Would be the way I would describe a lot of F1 races, if I'm being entirely honest, right? Like, you're going there to see the support races. You're going there to get some merch. You're going there to walk around and do everything.
Because by and large, like, depending on where you are, you're just seeing every minute you see some cars go by.
Exactly.
Right.
And then you watch the screens the other 90% of the time. Yes, absolutely.
In your experience, can you always see a screen? Because I don't know. Like,
yes.
Yeah, you always have access to a screen.
Pretty much always. So where we were stationed in the energy station, so there was one screen that we had a very sort of like oblique angle to, but there's also a screen kind of almost more facing the drivers, because I don't think a lot of the stand could see it, and we could kind of see it, but it was the closest screen that we had. So we kind of like spent the time like sort of watching the cars kind of go back and forth. As soon as they were gone, you look over to the screen that was kind of above us. So yeah, so generally you do have a screen, but after having my Coda experience a few years ago, was not thrilled about the idea of Vegas, because I love going to Vegas. It's not too far away. It's an easy drive. It's a few hours from where I live, so it's not too bad typically. But Vegas gets gnarly at certain times of year. So, like, there was a point my wife and I went like a few years ago for like Labor Day, and you spend hours and hours in traffic on the freeway, because like it's normally like a 3 or 4 hour drive, but when it turns into a 6 or 7 hour drive because of traffic, it becomes not fun, right? So that was something I was concerned about. And then the main thing I was just worried about was that because they're closing down a huge portion of Las Vegas, right? Like, not only just the actual huge part of the strip, but also some of the roads behind the strip, which is typically kind of how you kind of will hopscotch yourself around if you're kind of going from one side to the other. And so seeing all this, I was like, oh, it's going to be a complete nightmare. It's going to be a disaster. I don't want to go. I don't want to go. Not going to. But then as the race got a little bit closer, ticket pricing started to go down. Flight pricing started to go down. Hotel pricing started to come down. And then Red Bull was like, hey, would you like to come? We've got a couple passes for the energy station. I was like, all right, you know what? This is the time. Let's do it. So booked some cheap flights, which were surprisingly cheap to go out. Literally the day of the race. The hotels, I will say, like we stayed at Planet Hollywood, which was kind of right on sort of the right before you kind of got onto the pit straight, sort of at the end of the Vegas. Sorry, Planet Hollywood is exactly at the end of the strip where they would take the left and kind of turn back off to go into the toward like the start finish line. It was reasonable. It was honestly a little bit more expensive, but it was ballpark what you would pay on like a mildly busy weekend. Like these are all good signs for me, right? I was like, oh, you know what? If it's not that expensive, it couldn't be that busy. And the answer was, it was phenomenal. It was not busy at all. Okay, now I say that with a
Is
little
that
grain of
bad or
salt.
good though? I don't know if it.
So it did not sell out. So where I was sitting, I could see this grandstand in front of me was probably like 3/4 full.
Yeah, they messed
Mind
up
you,
there, right? They priced it too high.
they priced it too high.
Like that, they
Absolutely.
should have sold this thing out. There's no reason why
Yes.
they shouldn't have done that. They clearly went
Yes.
too hard on the
They
pricing. Yeah.
completely agree. Completely agree. I think because a lot of these tickets, they were talking about, especially with most of the tickets, or at least a lot of them were being sold with like hotel packages. And so you're talking about, oh, $1,300 for an okay seat and a room at whatever hotel, like these huge amounts of money. And what happened was, I think a lot of people were turned off by that idea,
Mm-hmm.
didn't show up. When we got in the Uber from the airport to the hotel, he was telling us how like every single person he had picked up that day booked their ticket like the day before or whatever. And like, oh, we saw it was cheap, so we just decided, whatever, let's go. Which is the right move, because honestly, the tickets and the hotels and everything were the cheapest literally like Friday before the race. Like it was just, it came down and down and down because they realized that they really needed to sell tickets. So that being said, it was incredibly smooth for us. Now, mind you, we came in on Saturday, so we came in probably a lot later. We arrived like 6 hours before the race started, right? So quite close to the actual event. But it was incredibly easy. The airport was not super busy. It took us like 10 minutes to get to the hotel. It was great because you actually drive on the track. So we actually were, I've got this great like video of like we pull on to like Koval, like where like they take that 200-mile turn. I'm like, oh, they're gonna be driving 200 miles an hour here in like 3 hours. This is dope. And it was very easy to walk around. So I will give one thing to Vegas. Vegas is a very walkable city most of the time. Like this strip is very much designed for you to weave in and out of all of the shops and casinos and all this kind of stuff. And all that was wide open, even though that like they had kind of shut some things down and it was like you couldn't quite cross the strip in so many places. It was very easy. And honestly, that's a big reason for me to enjoy a thing because let's be honest, when you go to a race in person, you're not getting you're getting a worse experience than watching it on TV if you
Yep.
just care about the actual racing.
Yep.
So in fact, actually before we were recording here, I actually had to go refresh myself because even though I was there's definitely some moments that I missed either
Yep.
because I wasn't paying attention to the screen at the time or it's at the end of the race and there's a bunch of stuff going on. So like for me, like the simplicity and the ease of getting in and out was definitely a huge contributor, and it was super smooth. Like honestly, it was, yes, maybe not quite as busy as they had expected, but the fact that everything was easy to get in and out of, it was very simple. Like there was no major problems at all, and if I ignored some of the racetracky stuff, I could have just assumed that I was on Vegas on a semi-normal weekend, which I think could not be any more of a glowing review for how well that they did build the infrastructure. They did sort of build the whole thing up. And I know that this is not the experience for everyone. I know there's plenty of traffic and stuff. And a lot of people in Las Vegas were very upset because they were building up all this stuff. They had they blocked off all of the public viewing places as much as they could. Although, to be honest, you can still watch the race for free super easily from like a million different places. Like you can literally just sit on the other side of the strip and just see the cars go by. They couldn't stop you. Like people who are complaining about that, I think they were just trying to find a couple of key areas on the bridges. You can even still see through on the bridges, but they kept you moving around. But just my experience was very much so that in, out, everything very seamless, very smooth, better than Vegas on some sort of busy weekends, which considering they still had a ton of people in town, I would give them huge props. It was expensive. Taxis were expensive. Starbucks was expensive. Everything else was kind of expensive around the race, but it was way better than I expected.
Well, I'm pleased you had a good time. Like, I wonder if it'll be like that next year. Like, if it will have the same vibe.
I think it probably will be because
Okay.
honestly, like there's like first and foremost, they designed things well. Like everything
Yep.
was really easy. Like they had lots of signs up. Everything was really shut down, or at least everything that needed to be shut down was shut down.
Yep.
So like there was no like issues. Like we didn't. The only time we waited in a line was when we waited in line to get a shoey. I don't know if you saw this. There was in
Yeah,
front of the Bellagio fountains. They had the shoey bar where they would sell you
so good.
a Red Bull drink and an actual shoe. I didn't realize until we actually got there. It's an actual real race, like Sparko race shoe. They just put a little like liner inside of it for the actual drink.
Whoa.
But a legitimate actual race shoe.
But it was like
Um,
$700 or something for this
it was
drink.
$130, which is a lot of money.
But if
It's
it
a lot
is
of
a
money.
real shoe, then they have
It's a
borne the
real shoe.
expense. The expense. So.
Yes, it's a real shoe, and when you're paying $100 for a T-shirt, paying $130 for a cool drink with a shoe, and
Yeah, I
they immediately
prefer that.
started. They also immediately started selling for like $300 on eBay because they were limited. Not that I would sell mine because I think it's really cool. But that was the only line we waited on the entire weekend. Like it was phenomenal. So, and of course, I would be remiss to not talk about the energy station.
What is
Do you
that?
know? Okay, so I have only. This is the first time I've ever been invited to the energy station, but I believe that Red Bull have been doing this for quite a while. This is essentially so most of the teams, not all of them, but most of the teams have their own areas. So, for example, I walked by Mercedes, which is actually kind of right down the thing, and they have this like huge area built out where they sell incredibly expensive tickets. And if you go there, you get like free merch, and then like Toto will come by and I don't know, give you a back rub or whatever. It's just there's a lot of like
Sounds
people
nice.
who like circulate. Yeah, I'd pay for that. But there's like
I
you know,
bet that's a strong back rub. That is like
oh
an
yeah, dude.
intense.
Oh dude,
You're
yeah,
never
man.
gonna be
I'd
the
be.
same kind of thing. He's gonna unlock something.
Just don't give him headphones; they'll like smash it across you.
Yep.
But no, so a lot of the teams have these sort of areas. I believe that Red Bull have been doing it for quite a while. Essentially, it is a sort of competitor to the F1 Paddock Club, which the Paddock Club is legitimately like, the people who, when you see the cars come in to take a pit stop, if you look up, like those are the people who paid for those tickets to go to the Paddock Club. I've never been there, but as my understanding of that's sort of the official F1 like sort of fancy expensive ticket thing where they have all the booths or the suites and stuff. So essentially, you walk in, and they had it first and foremost. They had like I think it was an RB18 or whatever. They had an F1 car mounted sideways on the wall as you come to check in. So very very cool stuff. They also had another one on the roof. They had the DJ Disclosure playing a set while everyone's coming in. They had an Alpha Tauri merch shop. I went and bought myself an Alpha Tauri shirt. I would have bought another if they had my size. It was cool. It was a very cool setup. And then look, I'll be honest with you. I drank a lot of Red Bull that day. Like every time I turned around, I'm not even kidding. Inside the energy station, there were probably 10 different bars, all with different Red Bull themed drinks. Some were. I've learned that I love watermelon Red Bull. Apparently, it was really quite
Yeah,
delicious.
I've
But
never
like,
tried non-Red Bull Red Bull. Like I've never tried another flavor.
you know what? I was actually in the same boat. I always like drink like sugar-free Red Bull, and even that I don't drink Red Bull that often. Dude, it was everywhere. It was great. Like they had and the thing is, they had all these like unique custom drinks and stuff all over the place. Like almost like each little bar had it, but and then it was obviously just right on the actual track. So it was very cool. Those tickets, I know, if you were to purchase them, were a large chunk of money.
So do you
which,
get somewhere to go watch the race from there?
so there's no like seats really. So it was kind of all there are seats, but if you want to actually see the race really well, you stand up. But it's basically like, so where we were standing, I can send you a picture later, but where we're standing, we're looking down at the marshals and then the barrier and the fence and then the track.
Right, but
So
you
it
have
was,
somewhere you can watch basically, like as part
yeah.
of
So
this
basically everyone
thing.
just kind of hung around the kind of like little terrace sort of area where you're just staring right onto the track. So like it was actually kind of sad. A lady right beside us, she was taking some photos. She dropped her phone and it landed on the concrete. And one of the marshals actually went to go and get her phone for her. Like that was how close we were. I guess if that kind of helps. Like,
That
it's where
phone
like
is
we were.
destroyed, right?
It was fine actually.
What?
She had a big case on it. She had a big case on it, but
Is she
it
a
landed.
YouTuber?
But
She's doing one of those like, oh, look at my drop test.
she was very stressed, as I think everyone would be when you're at a track. And then yeah. But yeah, you were very close. It was kind of like, where they see like along the track where the marshals will have like those loaders where they'll pull the cars
Yep.
out. Like there's a like right in front of us, right? So very, very, very close. It was incredibly fancy. Again, thank you to Red Bull for the tickets because it was a unique experience. But yeah, it was a very, very cool event. The race was good and the weather was good too. I think a lot of people were really afraid that it's gonna be super cold and there's gonna be like no grip. And while certainly chilly, I think it was significantly warmer than people had expected because people were thinking, like, oh, it's gonna be almost like freezing. And I mean, I was out there in like a normal jacket and it was very
Right.
comfortable. I don't know exactly what the temperature was during the race, but it was really not bad. It was funny though. It was quite calm. Now Vegas is a windy, windy city, especially the day after. A ton of flights were delayed because like there was only one runway running because it was so windy they could only take off in one direction. Like there was turbulence on the plane before we took off. Literally, just the plane was swaying
That's bad.
back and forth
Yeah.
as we were boarding. It was kind of rough, but it was interesting because being there actually at the event, you always hear, about how wind sensitive the cars are. You're like, oh, people think, oh, something's wrong. It's like, oh, it was just a gust of wind. So we were there and it was quite calm. And then out of nowhere is quite an aggressive bit of wind. I don't know how fast it was. So it was like enough to go, oh wow. And almost immediately here on the radio, people like they're all the drivers like you hear like Lewis talk
I
about it and
heard
everything.
that, and
It was
it's like wind's picking up.
yeah. It was like from nothing to like enough to like almost kind of like you have to like shift a little bit. Like, whoa, windy. That was a really cool. That was almost like the most visceral kind of thing. Cause I'll be honest, F1 cars aren't actually that loud. Like you don't need earplugs, and we were like really close. You also can't smell them, which I know like sounds like probably good for the environment. But like if you go to like most other forms of motorsport, it's a really visceral experience.
Mm.
You feel the cars, you hear the cars, you smell the cars. Like it's a real thing. And F1, I feel like, is much more sanitized. Yes, they're loud, but they're not crazy loud. You don't really feel them driving by. You don't really smell them driving by. You smell tire smoke maybe, but yeah, that'll be the only thing where it's like it's not quite as raw as I'm sure. If, this is 20 years ago or 25 years ago when
Yeah.
they're still running V10s and all this kind of
Pieces
craziness.
of
It's
car
just like,
hitting you in the face as they're driving by, you
yeah,
know?
look, man, I'm not gonna lie. Like, it was just kind of like every time they came around, those two, I'm like, that's for they're gone, they're gone. Yeah, but it was a lovely experience. It was well worth going to, and yes, I don't think they sold out this year. I think that they're gonna lower the prices next year.
Yeah, I
And
think now they've kind of understood what their market demand is.
yes,
Yeah.
and I also think that the everyone's going to sort of recalibrate a little bit because I think the hotels will kind of calm down a little bit. And the thing is, I actually have a lot more faith in the fact that this is a good Grand Prix going forward. Not only because the racing was good
Yep.
and the track was good,
Track was
but
great.
also again, phenomenal, right?
Yep.
Especially because it's cold and slippery. It's a little bit of a different challenge for
Yep.
everybody.
And it was
also,
exciting to watch in a few corners, like that final corner where they have no visibility
yeah.
to fly around it. It's like, ooh, there's
Oh
some
my
fun
God.
in it. Like,
Wild.
yeah, there's like
Wild.
there's some interest in, and also like there was a lot of overtaking. Like it's a track you can
Yes.
overtake on, which is rare for a street circuit. Like
Mhm.
I was pretty impressed with the overall experience. It was genuinely one of my favorite races of the year. It had all of the
Yeah.
stuff that I enjoy, including like a bunch of safety cars. So, like you don't know what's going to happen. Like I think that, and what I will say too about the safety cars, this feels like one of the most efficient Marshall
Mhm.
tracks that I've seen. Like there was some terrible accidents, like Lando or whatever, and they were just like they were handling it, like there were pieces of
Yes.
bodywork flying all over the place, and those marshals were just handling it. Like it was,
Yeah.
I think from that perspective, very well run, and maybe they had designed the track to have a lot of access, maybe,
Yes.
which
They
is kind of
absolutely
one of
did.
the key parts, right?
Yeah. And there was a lot of infrastructure everywhere, a lot of loaders in pretty much every sort of zone where you might potentially have to pick up a car. Lots and lots and lots of marshals. I don't know how many marshals are a typical Grand Prix, but just for where I was standing, within eyesight, there was probably like 15 marshals. And
Okay.
this was just at a small, slow speed part of the track. So certainly a ton of people who are on sort of standby. And it also helps, I think, that's quite a long track. It's the second longest track on the calendar now. So especially when there's like a safety car or something, they can kind of bunch the pack up, and the marshals have plenty of time to go out, or at least plenty of time, relatively speaking, to actually go and clean stuff up before they come back around. Yeah, no, it was really well done, and I have a lot of faith. Again, I'm going to talk a lot about the whole infrastructure and easy of use because like no one wants to spend all this money and then have a like bad experience, right?
Yep.
Going to the race. I have a lot more confidence that Vegas is a good spot to do this, not only because of the racing, but also because Vegas handles a lot of large events, whether it's CES or any number of huge sort of trade shows or whatever.
It's
or,
all
I'm saying, like
hotels.
NFL, and it's all hotels. There's like 130,000 hotel rooms in Las
And
Vegas. Something
you
just
don't have to
absurd.
go far once the race is done.
Yes,
Right?
that's the thing that
Yeah.
I really was sold on this because the airport is right beside the track, which is right beside and around the actual strip. So like it took us 6 minutes to go from our hotel room to the getting to the airport, right? And that was the day after. Like you would assume there's all this traffic and stuff. Like this is like as everyone's leaving. It took us 6 minutes.
Yeah, but like also once the
$41,
race is
but
done and people are trying to leave immediately, well, you're actually just going to your hotel, which is like walkable from where
exactly.
you are, right?
And that was the thing I loved. Like everyone just spread out, and obviously
Yeah.
the race finished up at like midnight or whatever. But like everyone just spread out, and guess what? Vegas has a lot of things to do at midnight, so it's like everyone just goes to the casino or whatever, and like everyone went to go hang out for a few more hours because like, oh, this is a great time, and nothing felt like it was overly crowded.
Yep.
It was just felt like Vegas on a slightly busy night, which was phenomenal. So I will say, like, if anyone is on the fence about potentially going to the Grand Prix next year, yes, you're probably gonna deal with some traffic driving out there, and yes, there's a little bit of stuff here and there, but from my experience this year, it was no worse than like a somewhat busy weekend in Vegas, which happens like 10 times a year anyway.
Yep.
So yeah, two huge thumbs.
Touch on a few things in the race. So there was a bit of hubbub at the beginning between Max and George, to which Max received a penalty. Max
Uh-huh.
Verstappen, man, I just
Yeah.
the
Yeah, it
way
was
he
funny.
drives, I just can't. I just can't
Well,
sometimes.
he didn't even make it through turn one before pushing Leclerc off the track, and then
I
later.
know.
Oh, to be fair, the George thing in the moment, I thought it was a little bit more Max. I actually do think it's a little bit more George turning in. I think Max actually was probably entitled to the space there.
Oh, I've conflated those two things. Max was against Charles Leclerc at lap one,
Yeah,
and then it was with George later on.
yeah,
What
yeah,
he did to
exactly.
Charles Leclerc, I just think, I just
I think it was largely on purpose. I will give him a little bit of credit. The track was really cold. I mean, you saw Lando crash the next lap, just doing he's
Austin,
basically driving normal.
Austin, come on, man,
Well, okay,
come
I,
on.
I maybe should make the argument that Max Verstappen doesn't know the limits of his car. Probably. Okay, you know what? That's fair. That's fair. I'll walk
Like
that
the
one back.
guy does this stuff in every race. Like he just wanted Charles off the track so
Send
he
my
could be fast,
regards.
right? Like that's
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. Look, I mean, he did get a penalty for it. I mean,
He
even I think
did, but
he
I
is
still don't think it was
recognized.
enough. Like I genuinely don't. Like for,
Well, okay, now see, that's a
he
slippery
should have
slope,
been
though. Like the
forced to
other
give the
thing,
place
right?
back. That's what should have
But
happened.
but the thing is, we've talked. The 5 second penalties existed for that reason because, like, yes, there's definitely scenarios in which you eat the penalty because you know that you're going to get an advantage. And I think Fernando has actually done that a couple times over the last couple of years, as far as like, oh, you know what, I know I'm going to get away with it because it's going to be worth it. Because
But then the penalty should be harder because like that's true, right? Like everybody knows, like it's 5 seconds is not a problem for Max Verstappen.
yeah,
So he could just do
that's
whatever he wants, right? You've given him a ticket,
true.
just do whatever he wants now.
Yeah, but it's like I think it could be problematic because the problem is that that only works. Hey, you have to give the place back if that's the sort of penalty that they give instead of a time penalty. What happens when the stewards take 10 minutes to decide and suddenly there's 30 seconds between the cars or whatever? Like I think it's a tricky
No,
thing
I
to
know
do
it's
in
it's hard.
practice.
It is hard, right? Like
Yeah,
I don't know of a way to deal with that. I just know that it just annoyed me in the moment. Like it just is like
yeah.
it just did.
Well,
It's just not sporting, right? Like
yeah.
it's just not
Send,
sporting.
send the stewards my regards. Was
Like
look, man. Yeah,
that I forgot he said that. It's like at that point it's just like you know what I mean?
yeah. Look, man. Max is a character. I think the only thing I will say, and you and everyone else will know that I'm not exactly the world's largest Max Verstappen fan. The one thing I will say is that, in my personal opinion, so much of F1 these days is very sanitized, very corporate, very PR friendly. And it does feel like Max and Lewis, I would say, on different sort of approaches. But I think in large part, they speak their mind. They kind of say what they want to
Mm-hmm.
say. And I actually do. I do kind of miss that because I was not an adult, and I think a lot of the glory days of F1, and in the
Yep.
'80s and some of the '90s and stuff. And like I think there's a lot of those times where like I'm watching old races or listening to podcasts about them, and it's just like these wild, crazy things would happen. It's like none of this stuff ever happens today. Like it's like these are businessmen who are making tens of millions of dollars. They're not out here beating each other up because they cut each other off. It's like obviously we probably shouldn't have people beating each other up on the track, but like there is a small element of me which is like you know what, at least Max has some personality. At least like he can be, I guess, the villain in some ways, but I do appreciate that because when everyone is just happy
Sure.
and friends and it's just a bunch of people going out and driving around in circles, it almost loses a little bit of the meaning, in my opinion. And obviously, these are
See,
all shades of gray, but like that's the only defense I could give from him is like at least he's making it interesting,
I
even if
see what
he's
you're
becoming the
saying,
villain.
but one of the things I like about Formula One is that it is 20 guys who
Mm-hmm.
are ruthless to win,
Yep.
right? They all want
Yes.
to win. But I
Mm-hmm.
like that they are friends. Like a lot of these guys are friends now. And the reason I like that
Yeah.
is because they are putting their lives on the line. And I don't think I would enjoy this sport in the same way if it was in the days where it looked like these guys didn't care if they killed each other. And I'm not
Yeah.
sure if I personally, this is me, right? My tastes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Yeah.
think I could enjoy the sport if I had to fear for everybody's lives towards the end of the season because someone wants to be world champion.
Sure, I completely agree with that, and
I'm
I
not saying
don't.
that's what Max is doing, by the way. I'm just saying, like,
Yeah, yeah,
in
yeah.
response to your, like, it is maybe a bit too clinical. Like,
Look,
I
it's
understand what you're
way
saying, but
safer.
it's just like for me, I prefer the safety of it because it's already
Of course.
inherently so dangerous.
Yeah.
I don't need them to be putting each other's lives at risk. They're doing it enough on their own, you know?
Yeah, look, I agree with that. I don't think that people should be out here like what he did in qualifying, right? When he kind of like ruined Ocon's lap and stuff like that kind of stuff. It's dumb.
Where
And
he's just
I
straight up just like he didn't like what
yeah,
Ocon did, so he just decided
yeah,
to dive bomb him. And it's just
yeah,
like,
yeah, I agree.
you were the world champion. Like, what are you doing?
Yes,
Like, you don't even
that's
need
what
to
I
get
do.
out of bed in the morning. Like, you're
I do that in
fine.
go karts. I do that in
Yeah,
go karts, not as a Formula One world champion.
yeah.
Yeah, so I agree. I agree. Look, I'm not trying to defend him whole cloth or anything. It just to me, it's just like, yes, of course these cars are safer and all these things, but it does, I think, benefit the sport at least somewhat to have at least some characters. And
Mm-hmm.
if people get a little bit pissed sometimes when they're driving, whatever, to me, I'm kind of okay with that, right? Like to a limit, and obviously there should be penalties and whatnot. But
Yep.
if everyone, it makes it a less of a spectacle. Like I mean, I know you're a big wrestling fan, right? Like
Yep.
imagine if they removed some of the spectacle there because it was a more corporatized kind of thing. It's like
Well,
I
that
don't
is
mind
exactly
some
what they did.
people.
They did that in the
Well, that's fair.
2000s.
Well, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair. But yeah, that's just kind of my 2 cents on it. I don't want to be a Max defender, but I do appreciate the least
I mean, it's helpful
he.
because I am a hater, right? I am.
Sure, sure.
I am.
Well,
Like,
he
I
was. You
don't
know what
like
though?
him. I don't like the way he drives. I don't like his personality. Like, there is no redeeming quality for me with him. Like I just how I feel, but I respect him
Yeah,
as a champion. Like the guy is
yeah.
incredible. He's one of the greatest that's ever gotten in the car. Like the season has proven that this year. It was maybe debatable a couple of years ago. Like, but no, I think at this point, absolutely not. Like the guy
Mm-hmm.
is he will probably be world champion next year and the year after that as well. And I think he's earned
Probably.
that. Right? Like I think he's earned
So
that. But
I'm
there
curious
are still
then.
things that he does that I just it tarnishes him for me.
Yeah.
For me, like, and I can't get past it.
Sure. I'm curious what your thoughts are on. He was by far the most vocal person talking down the race,
Yeah, yeah,
saying like, "Oh, we look like clowns," and someone asked him about, the everyone got a $200 voucher. What do you think? He's like, "Oh, I would if I was a fan, I'd tear the place down." Like a lot of these kind of things.
yeah,
Like, I know he got a lot of goodwill from a lot of the fans who were a little bit irritated with the
yeah.
race, and I think afterward, I think most people have kind of agreed that it at least was a solid Grand Prix of maybe not the smoothest as far as the action. Does that like sort of sticking up for the fans
No,
kind of stuff
because I
do
think
anything
he's a
for you? No.
hypocrite. Because I
Fair,
watched like
fair.
a 2 minute video of him talking about how there's no soul in it and no emotion in it, and what he
Mhm.
wants
Mhm.
is the like he wants there to like he believes in the old tracks, he doesn't believe in these tracks, and
Yeah, yeah.
people coming out and going to a show and like he wants people to focus on the drivers. I'm like, you
Yeah,
know what? I agree with that. But then when
I
he
agree.
wins, he starts singing "Viva Las Vegas," and it's like, so
Yeah,
what then? Like,
yeah.
I feel like you can't have both, right? Like, you can't
Totally
like
fair.
like if I thought his criticism was really good, like in this clip that I saw, where he's just like, I don't want people to come here and have a party. I want them to come here and enjoy the race for what it is. Even though, as you said, which I actually kind of agree with, I actually do think you kind of need a little bit of both now because, like, going to the
Yeah.
track is maybe. But anyway, but then, like, you
Mhm.
can't then lean into the Vegas stuff. Like, you can't, like, criticize, in my
Yeah.
opinion,
Yeah.
don't criticize that it's in Vegas because they want it in Vegas and then, like, meme it because you want to get a social media clip. Like,
I agree with
you
that.
can't
I
have
completely agree
both
with
of
that.
these things. And so,
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah. And
yeah.
and I understand, like, oh, I have reservations about the event and after the race. Like, I was pretty good. Like that's a completely understandable thing. I think most people had a lot of reservations for like, would the racing be entertaining? Would it be,
Yep.
good racing, blah blah blah. But I do agree. I think he went really hard against it at the beginning and then very much leaned into it, which it's complicated. But yeah, there's a lot to be said about Max. And I think we'll probably talk a little about that more on the next episode when we wrap up
Hmm.
the season. But yeah, that's definitely something that stood out to me from that. What did you think about the Lando incident? Because
Oh,
that
man.
that was tough. That was tough to
That
watch.
looked hard.
Yeah,
That's one of the worst crashes this year, I think.
it's got to be. Yeah, yeah.
Like, because he hit two things fast, and like,
Yes.
yeah, did he just lose control? Like I don't even remember now. Like I don't think anything really
So
happened, right?
no, I think it was on lap 2, I believe. So everything was still quite cold. I think
Yeah,
there was a bump in the track, and I think maybe he had like sort of just put a little bit of steering lock in as he hit the bump and lost control because it snapped
because he kind
super,
of
super
bumped
quickly.
into one wall, span round, and just
Yeah.
all the way down the track and hit another. Yeah, and he
Mm-hmm.
was, there were just some characteristics of that crash, which like he was just sitting in the car for a while, which is like abnormal.
Yeah.
That is, and
Yeah, yeah,
they
yeah.
took him to hospital. Like he was a bit banged up,
Mm-hmm.
and he seems like he's doing okay, which I'm really happy about. But I felt bad
Yeah.
for him too. It could have been a really good race. Like Oscar had a great race,
Yeah.
so like Lando
Oh yeah.
probably would have had an even better one or as good, right? And so I felt for him because it was it was a big old whack.
Yes. And it's also always embarrassing too, because I mean it was essentially his error. Like I don't think it
Mm-hmm.
was him doing something incredibly dumb. I think he just kind of got caught out and sort of just it snapped at just the wrong time.
Yep.
But it's always a little bit embarrassing when you crash on your own, especially on a straightaway with nothing that's really, I get it for him. And also we have to consider that if you do look at the points tally, well, there happens to be a pretty close fight for what is it, P4 in the driver's standings right now? Because it's okay. So Carlos and Fernando are tied on 200 points. Lando's at 195 and Leclerc's at 188. So technically all four of them, but really Lando, Fernando, and Carlos are all, absolutely fighting for
Yeah.
P4 in the championship. Which I'm assuming there's a fat bonus involved for that too. So it's like if he would not have crashed out, if he would have done even remotely well, he'd probably be the heavy favorite to be P4. And now it's going to be a very much toss
Well,
up of how the next race goes.
and the constructors, for fourth place in the constructors, McLaren are at 284 and Aston's at 273. So that's really close as well. So that's important for the teams. So
Mm-hmm.
losing Lando in that race was not good
Yeah.
for McLaren in like every aspect,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Besides the millions of dollars of damage in the car and the
yes.
potential millions of loss. Yeah. Yeah.
And so you got to
Yeah.
imagine from his perspective, it's probably good it was such a hard whack, so everyone had a bit of sympathy for him. Where if he,
Yeah.
right, like if it if it wasn't so hard, it'd be like Lando, man, you're killing me here, you
Yeah.
know?
I think most people, if that was, say, Piastri, I think people are like, oh, look at that amateur. Like, oh, he's still got to learn and stuff. But the fact that it was happened to Lando, I think is a good reminder that these things can happen to anybody. And it may be a little bit more of a testament to Max's very good consistency that these things never happen to him.
It
But
is
I think
kind
it's
of
just like,
unbelievable the reliability of the car and the drivers
yes,
this year, and like
yes.
especially Max. Like, I think
Hmm.
Sergio's done pretty well too, right? In that regard, to my
Yeah.
memory, but
Well,
like,
no, but he's crashed a fair few times
yeah,
though.
yeah,
I think
he
he's
has.
yeah.
But
Like whereas
like
Max has been
Max, it's
incredibly
unbelievable
clean.
that he has
Yeah.
kept it within the lines for the entire
Hmm.
season as well. Like that,
Literally. Yeah.
that is honestly I figured he wouldn't have won so many races just because there was just a natural odds in which the car wouldn't get around the track the whole time. But that has not
Absolutely.
happened either, which is kind of incredible.
Yeah.
But I kind of feel like with Lando, when he crashes hard.
It's all or nothing, baby.
Like I think at that one there was one in the wet last season in qualifying.
Oh,
And it was
yeah.
very similar to this, where he just like span and smashed
Was
into
that
a wall and span more, and there were
Spa?
wheels. I think it was Spa, wheels going everywhere. Like
Yeah, yeah.
when he crashes, he crashes. You know,
Hey,
doesn't
man.
do things by half measures. I do think that is the thing about Lando, though. In general, he doesn't do things by half measures. Like
Good.
he goes and he goes hard. Like
Yeah.
and it reminds me of Max in that regard sometimes, which is why I would love to see him
Yeah.
and Max together. Like that's actually a dream pairing of mine. Because when I
I would
look
love
down
to
the
say so,
grid
yeah.
and I like
Hmm.
who could be that number two, I think Lando is maybe the best option of like who could actually put it to Max. I think Lando is maybe the one who could do it the most.
I think I'd love to see that negotiation with McLaren on how they get him out of contract.
It's not
'Cause
going to happen. And I think
yeah,
McLaren know
yeah,
that too. I think it's one of the reasons they
yeah.
lock him up so much is because they know Red Bull
Yeah,
want
yeah.
him. But like
Oh
I
man,
tell you
a
what, that
50-year contract?
friendship that Max and Lando have, that wouldn't last a season.
I'm curious. I
I
don't
don't
know,
think it would
man.
last.
It probably wouldn't. It probably wouldn't.
Because
It's
I
a lot easier
also
to be friends with
think,
someone. Yeah,
well, I think even also for the two of them, like
yeah.
I think the friendship would go out of the window pretty quickly. I think both of them together.
Yeah, it's a safe bet. I think it's difficult to be good friends with your teammate when you're properly competitive and
Yep.
really not just going to, oh, we P4 this year. Or whatever. It's like, no,
Yep.
who's gonna win the champion? Like, oh, I want to be. You have to be selfish. So
Talking about winning,
yeah,
Charles Leclerc, man. Oh, heartbreak.
you know
Heartbreak.
what? I just think we all have to admit that this is not his year. He's gonna get
He was
pulled
close
700
though.
times. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
like, bravo to him for taking Checo on that last lap. Oh, I was so excited.
Phenomenal.
I was so excited for him.
Even all the Red Bull people who I was surrounded with, even they were like, all right, that was pretty good. That was pretty good. Like, it was.
Sergio's had some bad luck last few races on that last lap,
He
you
has.
know?
You know, though, actually, can we give a shout out to Checo, though? Checo had a
Yeah.
really solid race. Obviously, started from, but he was like definitely like well down the field because he did make it through.
There's a lot of stuff said about
Q3.
Sergio Perez, and we'll say more again in the next episode, but he's still second in the Constructors' Championship, but he locked it up before the end of the season. Like,
Absolutely. And I mean,
he did the job.
He had a shot of winning this race, too.
Yeah,
It wasn't like Checo was like off the pace or whatever. Like, he was properly on it.
And
I know that he had
a different setup to Max.
Yes, he did. He had
Max's
a bigger wing,
setup was set better for this race. I think with the right setup, this could have been Sergio's race.
It could have. That's the thing that I really loved about this race. Any one of the three could have won it, right?
Yep.
Very easily. Like, and they all led the race like legitimately at different points. That was one of the things I just really, really enjoyed. I think a lot of people enjoyed about the race was just that it felt like it was never a foregone conclusion. It's easy to look at the standings right now and go, "Oh yeah, Max won a race, Leclerc got second."
There were so many safety cars. Any of those could have been for any three of them, too.
Absolutely.
Especially with all the dive bombing.
Yeah, and I don't know what corner it is, but it's the corner where they get super close to the wall, right? I believe as they're pulling out onto the strip. You know the one where it's like they kind of thread the needle, almost like in Canada or something. I'm surprised no one hit that wall because the amount of times you saw people get right up to the edge was properly impressive.
There are a couple of walls where some of the advertising was ripping up.
But everyone kept all the wheels on the car, and was it qualifying when Alex lost a tire or something, or one of the free practices? But yeah, man.
My favorite detail was the sphere.
Yes. Oh, the sphere was awesome. This is my first time seeing it fully done. I'd seen it as they were like building everything, but actually seeing it up close and personal.
Using it for like safety car, checker flag, stuff like that was really good. That was really good. I like that.
The sphere is so cool. It is just such a ridiculous, over the top sort of thing. I'm happy that thing's. Did you hear? I was reading earlier. They apparently were trying to build a sphere in London, and they canceled the plans. Has
it been canceled now?
Whatever.
The problem
sounds
is
like they canceled it.
Where they wanted to build it. People live there.
Oh, okay. That would be a problem.
Yes.
Yep. That's fair.
And that was why it didn't work out.
I live in the sphere. Just get some good blackout curtains. You'd be fine.
No, right? Like you see the memes from Vegas, right? People posting pictures. Yeah. That would be people's homes.
Yeah, it's a very Vegas thing.
Yes, I would love it to exist in London for the inside, but the outside can't work here. Like for where it was wanted to be built. There are other places in London where they could build it and it wouldn't be such a problem.
Yeah,
but where they wanted to put it, no way.
Yeah, that's totally fair. It's like, but you know what? It fits really well in Las Vegas. It's very visible. Even when you're flying in, you can absolutely see it super clearly.
Yeah, it's like a perfect Vegas thing.
Absolutely. I'm excited to see. In fact, CES coming up soon. Maybe not gonna try to go inside for something. Oh my god, imagine trying to game. Oh wait, I just got a video idea.
Game on the outside?
Game on the inside. Or the outside.
All of it?
2-player game. Some person. Okay. A brainstorm. We'll save this for an actual video. But yeah, the sphere was phenomenal. Honestly,
what would the title of that video be?
Gaming on the sphere. I don't know. I have no idea. Just I could Photoshop pretty good though. That'd be a good thumbnail. Yeah. All right, you know what, Mike? You got me thinking. Maybe I can borrow the sphere for 5 minutes. That wouldn't be expensive, right?
Just to play a bit of Counter-Strike on the sphere.
Oh, good lord! Oh no, I walked to the other side of the sphere. Hang on a second.
It would be a great Brook versus Pro.
Oh my god! Yeah.
The Pro setup is the sphere,
and the Broke one is like some little baby little screen or a projector and a little bowl or something. Oh my god, that would be We got some ideas here. If anyone's listening who would like to give me $500,000 to make this video happen, I would
Yeah,
love
you
to
wish
do
it would
it.
be more than that. Apparently, it's like 600 grand to advertise on the thing.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh my god,
Yep.
dude, that's disgusting. What about 3 a.m.? It's gotta be cheaper at 3 a.m., right? Can I get a little discount? Come
Maybe.
on, Mr. Sphere, man. I mean, give me an HDMI. I'll be in and out real quick.
So that was Las Vegas. We're gonna have one more episode this year. We're gonna wrap up the season. We're gonna. I've refused to scroll down on this document because our predictions are down there. There's one of them that's ringing in my head, and it's been ringing in my head for the entire season, and I feel like such an idiot about it. But there may be more that I will feel an idiot about, and we can see.
I look forward to debating this one with you and seeing how close we get on the points. Because I remember last year, it was not a particularly close battle.
No, I crushed
you. Kind
you.
of swept the floor with me.
I crushed
it was not
you.
close.
But I'm excited to review those on our next episode. Thanks for listening to the Backmarkers. We'll be back next time for our season wrap up. Say goodbye, Austin.
Goodbye and viva las Backmarkers.
Perfect.
I didn't sell it the way you sold it. And